My name is Eugene Kim, by the way. I'm for Internal Revenue Service Officer Chief Counsel. I've been there a little over 4 years now. The first 3 years was with small business self-employed, which is dealing with like 1040s, 1120s, that kind of stuff. And then just a little over a year ago, I switched to tax-exempt government entities here in Los Angeles. It deals more with like 990s, like nonprofits, 941s, which is like FICA tax, 940s, FUTA tax. Oh no, I think in the past, when it comes to panels like this in Loyola, they sent SBSC attorneys here, but I think upper management felt like giving you guys a treat and sending you a TG attorney this time. But TG is, I feel like it's like all the tax issues that are not common. We deal with like tax-exempt bonds, 501c3s, executive compensation, worker classification, just really specialized fields. And for myself, I deal with revocation of 501c3 status, worker classification cases. And most of my time is dealt with whistleblower cases. Those are really fun because normally with the IRS, people are really adversarial, and then you have all these terrible opposing counsel that really, they get really, I don't know, it's just not you guys, but I mean, like they want to.
I get adversarial.
Yeah, I mean they want to have their client's interest in mind, and when it comes to whistleblower cases, it's exactly what you think it is. It's essentially a pissed off employee that wants to tattle on their company, or just a concerned taxpayer or citizen that wants to tattle on anything, an individual, anyone. But essentially, those kind of cases. They fill out a Form 211, and they kind of explain why they think their target is not being honest with your tax returns. And they send them off to the whistleblower office, and they assign an attorney to each one of these claims. And I mean, we get wild claims too, but for the ones that we feel like are really serious, they assign an attorney because we take them very seriously, because that's one way we find people to audit. If you ask me how we find people, I honestly have no idea. It's like this massive machine. But one really important way is, people essentially just tattling on other people. And I think just recently, I think the best example is the UBS cases a few years ago when people were hiding taxable income in Swiss bank accounts. I mean, that all went down because of one informant. So it's really important. And the reason why people want a whistleblower is because at the end of the examination, and once we start collecting, we could give upwards of 30% of what we collect as reward for whistleblowing. So, people essentially make a living just whistleblowing. And yeah, it's really fun cases because they want to help you out. Like, when I'm on the phone for these informant conference calls, they are so ramped to help you out, and that's just not common in my practice. So it's great getting those cases. A lot of my time is dealt with those cases because, when we get those claims, it's just like mountains of documents, and then we just pour over them, and it's just really great because you feel like you're a team. And I guess you don't really feel that sometimes when you have the proper, fighting over whether or not someone has a tax home or something like that. So
Eugene, just to interrupt you for
a
second, could you step back and just give a tiny bit of overview of what the different divisions are when you work for Chief Counsel?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Just people have different levels of expertise, I think, and then what your role is at Chief Counsel versus other parts of the IRS field offices, maybe.
Yeah. So sorry if I'm throwing this all out. I just assume everyone knows apparently. But SBSC, Small Business Self-Employed, hires the most amount of attorneys. They deal with a lot of the 1040s, so that's why, I would say like maybe even like 70–80% of cases are all SBSC cases. And then we start specializing people. So there's this large business international branch that deals with cases that are $10 million and above. And those are the cases that, those are usually the cases that hit the news. So there's a specialized division for that. There's a criminal tax division. That's exactly what you think it is. We deal with civil taxation, but criminal tax, sometimes we feel like, okay, if we could get him for criminal fraud, let's use res judicata and let's get him for civil fraud, that kind of thing. So that's criminal tax. And then we have tax-exempt government entities, which is what I do, and just like I explained. We deal with everything else that's not within those three realms usually. And the national office has different branches as well. I don't think I can name them all for you because they just keep specializing and specializing. Essentially, they're just people that are waiting next to the phone, just fielding calls from field attorneys, because each attorney there, I believe, specializes in every code section in the Internal Revenue Code. So they're just there just to help you out. And that's why I feel like this job is great, because you don't feel alone. When an issue comes up, just call up someone in the national office, and then they're going to help you out. So you never feel alone in my job, because you have the national office backing you, and that usually kind of freaks people out when I tell them. So yeah, so I don't know what else I do. And in worker classification cases, those are the cases where we go after an employer when they essentially, they like to treat people as independent contractors. I don't know if any of you guys own a small business, but if you have a wage earner, you have to start withholding, and you have to pay their fair share of the FICA tax. So they like to put that burden on the employee or the worker, and then call them independent contractors. So we go in, and then there's this huge, like, I don't know how many factor test now, but it's really adversarial, because employers don't want to pay all that back employment taxes, and we go in and say, no, I think they are really employees, and then that's how a lot of cases go to tax court as well. I don't know what else. I guess I'll just go into the perks about working for the government. The main reason why I want to work for the government is for essentially the work-life balance. Most of the attorneys there, they show up at 8 o'clock and leave at 4:30. So they all have lives outside of work, and I don't know. It's just like, and then even though we don't get paid as much, we're bound by the OPM general schedule, so we don't get paid a lot. But I mean, I'm really banking on the 10-year loan forgiveness program. So I don't know if you guys are really serious about that. Yeah, I hope the government has money left. So I mean, that's why I'm there too. And I don't know. It's just kind of like they really respect your time. A lot of people go on vacation all the time, which is kind of a hassle too, because you always want to find someone to help, and then this person's on vacation. I'm like, again? And then yeah, so it's like stuff like that. I mean, government's great. You get a lot of trial experience too. Right after I passed the bar, just 3 months in, I had my first trial. And I mean, I've been in for 4 years now. I've had 5 trials so far, and all those cases had opinions. So it feels good seeing your name on an actual tax court opinion, and it actually shape, I guess, tax law jurisprudence. And people start citing for your cases, and it's so weird. And yeah, you actually feel like you're actually doing something, and that's really cool about my job. I don't know, the way tax court works is that once you have a tax court bar number, you can work anywhere in the country as long as you're licensed in one state. So, we have a really liberal transfer policy. So if you feel like, oh, I want to live in Portland one day, you could go ahead and just work there and still have, regular cases, because you don't have to take the Oregon bar exam. Because as long as the tax court knows that you have a tax court bar number, they'll let you practice anywhere you want. So I was originally in Thousand Oaks, and I was not feeling it. So I transferred down to Los Angeles, and they had me transfer there really quickly. So I mean, that's like pretty cool things about my job. I don't know what else.
How did you get an LLM? Did you come straight from a JD program?
Oh yeah, so if you guys are interested in working, we hire mostly through our honors program, which is, we like to hire attorneys right out of school, whether it's just regular JD programs or LLM programs. But I don't know, it's harder to get in through lateral work, but through the honors program, we do the whole OCI thing. That's like on my job. I didn't get an LLM. I think that's a concern for some people if they want to do tax law. But I mean, I guess you would say that you do have advantage if you do have one. But we look at everyone, and I don't know. We have an externship program here. That's another way to get to know you. I think it's called like the tax small case clinic. Yeah. So that's another way. We have Loyola students walking around my office all the time, so it kind of freaks me out too. It's like, who's that person? And then, yeah, it's just like we are really friendly with Loyola. It seems like we have a lot of students, really excited about their, the externship program, because we actually shove 10 cases in front of you, and we make you litigate those. So if you're really interested in tax court controversy, that's kind of like the way to go. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So, my name is Thomas Giordano. I'm with Johnson Giordano Roth. I guess I'm giving the small firm boutique perspective. I primarily deal with high net worth individuals, private clients, generally with international holdings, a lot of foreign citizens, residents with U.S. interests, and vice versa, U.S. persons. I have probably 15 clients that are disclosing those UBS accounts we mentioned through the voluntary disclosure programs. That's a big part of my practice. a lot of foreign trust work, offshore trusts, offshore corporations, partnerships. I started at Valencia Rose, which is a medium-sized firm, has a variety of practice areas. I guess one thing to know about going to a smaller firm boutique is you're not going to specialize necessarily on one sort of area. You get thrown into a lot of different things. I started developing a real interest in the international work. I love it. I think it's fascinating. So that's kind of where I've tried to steer my practice, but I do a lot of different things, estate and gift planning, although not as much because I'm not as interested in it. I try to focus on the income side of things, anything with the foreign element to the extent I can. And when you're dealing with high net worth individuals, you just get wide variety of things. Their income, their estate and gift planning, their business holdings. So it gives you a lot of variety. You don't necessarily specialize or just focus on one area, but that's kind of what I like. So that's my background. I came up through the LLM program here. My professor, I got a job with my professor at Valencia Rose. He was a partner there, and then he left, and I went with him, and since become a partner with him. And so that's kind of the path I took. As far as advice to give, I think it really depends on your goals. If I was doing it over again, and I might probably go to government for a couple of years, as anti-government as I've always been, because it's a good platform, it's a great place to learn, and it's great on your resume. Obviously, the big, large firms are a different route if you can get in there, and you'll hear more about them. That's also great for the resume, but it really depends on your long-term goals. If you really want to do estate and gift planning, then you'll seek out probably more of a boutique firm. The large firms don't tend to do that anymore, and that work has shifted over to mid-sized firms, boutique firms. It really depends on the long-term goals, but if you're looking to get at a bigger firm, then going through the boutique path is probably not the best course, because lateraling into a larger firm is pretty difficult to do. It's, as far as classes to focus on, unless you're set on transactional, I would say pay attention to Ed Robbins' class. I blew that class off. And I wish I had it, because you get the foundation from the substantive classes you take here, and you're gonna do a lot of learning trying to master those areas, and you don't want to spend all the time learning all the procedure again, which I've done on many occasions, because I just blew that class off. I didn't pay attention. I didn't show up much, but I cram for the final or whatnot. You think it's kind of boring, it's procedure, but it's an extremely helpful class. It's extremely important, unless you're going strict transactional route. So that's what I would say. You're going to get the foundation of partnership, corporate income, and those are all very important. But you don't want to have to spend the time on top of mastering those areas, or researching or learning that, and then also the procedure if you're in a controversy, or even not your typical tax court litigation, but you're at an audit, or you got a client coming in with a tax lien or a levy, and it's like, oh, what's the 30-day letter again? What's that 90-day? I remember something about all that. But, so, that's kind of my advice for while you're here.
One other question for you: would you speak to how getting involved with the bar has been helpful for you? Yeah,
I was fortunate when I got to Valencia Rose, they encouraged bar activity, so I just joined all of them, and I stayed involved. Anybody can join them, and it's easy to join them, but a lot of people don't follow up. I continue to follow up, so I ended up going through the rungs of Beverly Hills Bar and chairing that section. I'm the current chair of the LA County Bar Tax section. I did the International Tax Committee for the State Bar. I'm on the Executive Committee for the State Bar.
Which I'm just going to toot his horn a little. It's the LA County Bar Chair is a big deal. And are you the youngest chair ever?
I haven't done the research, but looking at
Most
my
people are
contemporary.
usually a lot greater than Thomas. So
Yeah,
he's
you know,
done more than just get involved. I mean, you've really,
Look,
really
I
done
graduated in 2008, right? So that wasn't the best time to go out and get jobs, and you know, I sought out Wayne Johnson, my partner, and Valencia Rose. I identified that firm. I started sending them emails to clerk for them before I started the LLM program. I then took his class, I then aced his class, and then I got an offer. And it's, you know, it's a difficult time, but there's opportunities. You just, sometimes you gotta make the most of them, and they're not gonna, you know, be advertised on the front page. And that's sort of what I did with the Bar Association. Even though I have a job, I had a job, you know, you don't know where you want to go, where you want to wind up. I know people across the entire state of California, if I wanted to move, from the bar associations and my involvement. And, you know, it's good to develop the network, and then ultimately, you know, it's not going to happen in your first 2, 3, 4 years, but then ultimately these people that you've met that are in San Diego or Sacramento or stuff, you begin getting referral sources at a boutique firm where, you know, that's your bread and butter. That's how you really drive up your income. That's how you move up, you know, to partner level. That's how you really control your own destiny. And you know, that's not going to be the case, I don't think, when you hear from Sam. He's not going to the Beverly Hills Bar hoping to land a Fortune 100 company, but you know, and that's not to say that there's not large firm attorneys that are on the Bar Association. Either way, I'd encourage you to get involved. But you know, there's opportunities to be had, and there's people to know, and it's served me well. And I've kind of moved up through that, and I can't wait till all my bar associations are over and I never have to do it again. But you know, 2008, 2009, 2010, you do what you got to do. And things are picking up now, and you know, but I'd still encourage any of you to get involved, and it's easy to get involved.
Sam Greenberg, did my JD here, graduated 2010, did my LLM here 2012. Spent 3 years at Latham & Watkins as a transactional tax attorney, and I moved over to Munger, Tolles & Olson, so same building, better view, higher up. What do I do? I represent mostly Fortune 100, 500 companies in mergers and acquisitions and dealing with the tax aspects, international, domestic, partnership, corporate. In addition to those, I also represent a lot of private equity. LA, fundamentally, at the end of the day, is a middle market kind of town, and the middle market is dominated by a lot of private equity firms buying up $100, $200, $300 million companies. So there's a lot of that kind of work going around here. What does that mean I get to use in day-to-day practice? Well, I'm the ultimate generalist. I have to know everything about Sub-C, corporate taxation. That comes up all the time with the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 clients. The intercompany rules, they love to deal with that. With the PE clients, you have to be a master of Sub-K. You have to know exactly what's going on. How do you acquire companies? How do you achieve deferral? How can you roll management over? Things like that. Structuring the transactions is big. The facts change all the time, and so you have to be able to jump from one chapter to the other. You can't just silo yourself into one. International is generally these days, particularly with intellectual property, there's always an intellectual property component. So you have to be well versed with what the consequences are there, so you don't wind up accidentally getting a bill. And a call from this guy who says that you owe tens of millions of dollars. It's a lot of work. The big law stereotypically is a lot of work. So there are very few of the way of vacations, or when you call people, them not picking up the phone to say that they're out of town, which is, I guess, one of the good things. The other nerve-wracking thing about the practice, though, is that you're expected to know everything. Even if you look at the largest international law firms in the world, their entire tax department may be 50 attorneys or less out of the 2,000 or 3,000 attorneys they have, and they will work on every single transaction that law firm works on, and you need to know how to deal with every single issue that comes through there. So it's a lot of pressure, I think, starting off, and I think that's been the biggest challenge going into it. You start, I think, when you leave law school with a very narrow kind of skill set, which is give me an issue, I'll research it, find the answer, you know, thank you partner, may I have another? And it goes on and on and on like that. But at some point, you will be presented with, I want to acquire this company, go. And usually you're sitting there with the corporate partner or with the senior corporate associate, and you need to figure out how to make that happen and make sure that they're not going to wind up with, you know, a 9 or 10-figure tax bill. So some of the companies that I tend to work for, like Berkshire Hathaway, Beats was a deal I just worked on with Carlisle, you know, really expensive headphones that the kids love. The Oak Tree Capital, you know, kind of the bigger names that you hear around Los Angeles. That's sort of my day-to-day. In terms of stuff that you need to do outside of that to excel at a major law firm, not only do you have to put in the time and do the work every day, but you need to be building a reputation in the community. So you have to not necessarily be competent, but at least be perceived as competent by the community. Now, how do you do that? Well, you have to do things like get involved with the Bar Association, right? One of the things that I do is I participate in comment projects by the ABA. The ABA tax section, whenever proposed regulations come out, you usually ask for attorneys to volunteer to put comments together for those projects. It's a lot of terrible work, and it's really boring, but it gets your name in a national publication that lots of lawyers see, and suddenly you become an expert in a very obscure area, and sure enough, given that there are only 1 or 2 people that may know that obscure area, you start becoming known as that guy who deals with, you know, subsection Q of whatever code section. In addition, I also teach. I'm an adjunct professor here. Highly recommended. Enjoy. And I also write. You know, I try to publish articles, various other kind of client alerts and publications, but it's definitely a full-time job to keep progressing within the firms. Because the large firms generally operate on an up or out type of policy, you have to keep doing those things or you will find yourself on the outside of the up or out equation. So that's sort of my day-to-day. I don't know if I hit everything on the list here. What do I wish I'd known earlier? I think it's important to have the structural background, and it's great that you do all the classes, and you have to be a master of the research. But I think when you're taking the class, more than just kind of focusing on what are the rules, what am I trying to learn, is trying to build a synthetic understanding of what it is you're learning and how it all works together. And trying to take the fact scenarios that you've seen and twist them a little bit in your head and figure out how they might implicate other areas of the same subject matter or even into other classes that you might be taking. It's that cross area that I think is the toughest mastery to obtain. And maybe the solution is just experience. But ultimately, over time, it's not enough just to know, I know these things in partnership, I know these things in corporate, I know these things international. It's knowing that what happens if the facts change in my partnership question, does that bleed over into all of my other issues? So I think that's the thing that I wish I had more of when I started. Had anything else, or is I have to listen? All right.
Thank you.
My name is Gregory Rao. I will start off in the beginning. I got out of law school in 2010, and I immediately started working for the Board of Equalization. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the state taxing authority for California that deals with sales and use taxes, as well as through the administrative process. When you go through the administrative process at the FTB, you end up at the BOE, ultimately for an appeal. So for me, it was a tough time in 2010 as well, coming out. But my governmental experience prior to that kind of helped me get to where I wanted to go. I kind of figured out that that was going to be difficult to get to kind of a mid-tier or large law firm initially. So for me, the government experience was both perfect, and one of the options for me was that you get experience off the bat. I mean, you got trial experience immediately. For me, it was writing opinions. It was all sales and use tax. It was a small piece of kind of tax code, but it's a particular subset of tax that not many people don't know about. They understand sales tax when you go and buy something, but there's a use tax component which is implicated in certain situations that most people don't know about and how it functions. It's a large revenue source for California and a large revenue loss for California at the same time. So it was interesting because I got to see small cases with amounts in dispute from thousands of dollars to really large cases, surprisingly, in tax, in multi-millions. So that was interesting. And I came in at a time, too, where I don't know if you're familiar with the Nortel technology transfer agreement litigation that was going on. And so the people that I got to work with were dealing with that on the legal side while it was getting litigated. So I was kind of getting implicated in that. And I was there for about a year and a half, and I wanted to spread my wings a little bit. It was beyond sales and use tax. There was a lot of opportunity, but you get tired of the 9-to-4 sometimes, and you want to expose yourself to a little bit, something different. So I applied to Ernst & Young through their state and local tax section. And to give you kind of before I get into the accounting space, is that, from my understanding, typically lawyers that go into accounting, I'm sure most of you don't want to do compliance type work. You don't want to look at returns and start ticking time numbers, and that's probably not why you are getting your LLM or went to law school. And that's not why I went to law school either. So when you get into an accounting firm, I think typically where lawyers end up are in the transactional advisory services side, doing a lot of M&A, federal deal work, international transactional work in the ITS group, and state and local. Income taxes, I deal with a lot of nexus concepts. When inbound investments occur as well, I sometimes jump on the state and local piece. So that's kind of tying into what he's talking about. When you have an inbound investment, obviously you're triggering a multitude of issues. You have federal issues, you have international issues, but then you get a lot of transfer tax issues sometimes too, where the state and local tax gets implicated, or in acquisitions, for example, where you're trying to buy a company. You typically see, you have partnership issues, you have federal issues, but there's the transfer tax, sales and use tax, state and local income tax issues that can be quite large and can be quite burdensome if not addressed properly during the process. So I typically, I'm on the state and local side, and I do controversy and kind of consulting type work. Where my purview ends in terms of being a lawyer is if I'm working on a transaction or a restructuring. Right now I'm working on a restructuring for a large manufacturer, multi-state manufacturer. Where my purview ends and where someone like Sam picks up would be, I stop at the drafting phase. So that's one thing we make clear off the bat is, at an accounting firm, I can't draft, the agreement. I can't draft the operating agreement. I can't draft the comp and benefit agreement. I can't, you can add pieces to it. You can kind of supply kind of information that you've learned. I can look at the tax piece and I can edit the hell out of the tax piece. And I can revise that, look into the law, write that whole section. But the corporate agreement itself goes to Jones Day, Latham and Watkins type group to get that done. So, but I think the experience you get in an accounting firm off the bat is client interaction. I started 2 years ago, and today I have a client meeting. I didn't just dress up for you guys, but I have a client meeting. I get to meet a large client in LA, and most of the clients in LA are mid-market. I have a lot of PE clients, obviously, a lot of PE issues. And one thing I wish I focused on more, by the way, is partnership rules, because they get very complicated. And if you gloss over the the K1 issues and carrying bases and all that, but if you really get into the nitty-gritty and application of it, it's implicated, I think, in everything I do, because everyone wants to drop something into an LLC, even if it doesn't make any sense. So there's always partnership issues that I see. But I enjoy the work that I do. I get good client interaction, and based on kind of the work I delve into. That's pretty much it. I think I touched on everything. I think the important class, obviously, state and local tax, if you want to go into my realm of work, is pretty important. It's something that it seems specialized, but there's just such a wide range of issues that you can delve into. Obviously, you guys have probably heard about some of the sales and use tax issues with Amazon, and cloud computing issues that go on with the multi-state. The controversies with states are fascinating too, because they just don't apply the rules very cohesively. Every state has their own rules. You have market sourcing rules. You have rules, single sales factor in some state. You have 3 factors in other states. So you're looking at multiple concepts at once. And for me, the most challenging part of my job is, I'll go to work and I'll have an agenda of what I'm going to do, but I'll get calls or emails for something that I have no idea where to start. Right? I mean, I know where to start. I just don't know where to go. But we have great resources. I was just dealing with the Hawaii tax issue. And surprisingly, Hawaii has a weird, complicated sales and use tax regime. So, I have a contact in Hawaii that I've dealt with before. I got on the phone immediately on Friday and banged out a memo on Monday that was to be delivered by 3 p.m. So those are the kind of interesting issues that I see.